If you're around car audio in the 1990s, most likely you know the name US Amps for their cheater amps, for their competition vehicles, for amps like this VLX25 rated 25 watts at 4 ohms and literally a 600 watt amp. Also the VLX400, which was a quote-unquote 200 watt cheater amp, which did over 3,000 watts at 1 ohm bridged. I have made videos of both of these amps. Make sure you check links in the video description if you want to see how they performed. Now let's fast forward 30 years into the future, or today. US Amps has 3 amplifiers currently available. We're going to test 2. We're going to actually test 1 today. The USA-50HC, which is a 2-channel amplifier. We'll get into the specs here in a little bit, but let's open up the box and see what's inside. We do have a birth certificate. They do test each amplifier before they send them out. You can see they test them at around 12.7 volts. So we're going to be feeding it quite a bit more than that for our test today. But let's take a closer look at the amp here and see what it looks like, what it comes with. It comes with 4 mounting screws and the nice little washers there to keep the amp from getting scratched. We do have a registration card, warranty card for you to put all your information down. And we have the manual, which again covers the 50HC, the 100HC, and the SQ442, which is the 4-channel, which we'll be testing in a future video. As we pull the 50HC here out of the bag, you can see this gorgeous finish. It is a medium blue. I would call it aqua blue, but people will probably correct me. But it has this hammered style finish to it, which you can't see unless you look at it really close here. And I know these images are in high dynamic range, so people may see these differently, but there you can see kind of a speckled finish there. It looks really cool. Let's take a look at what is available for the inputs. On this one end, we'll see 2 RCAs. We have inputs and outputs, so you can run your pass-through here as well. We have gain control, high-pass filter, low-pass filter. The crossover is switchable, high-pass, full, or low-pass / bandpass. Then we have a switch for the bass EQ for 0, 6, or 12 dB. I really wish that was variable, but it is just a switch. And the power LED is inside the palm tree. We'll show that again later when we power up the amp. On the opposite side, we have the power inputs as well as the speaker outputs. Starting with the power, we have 0 gauge for power and ground, about an 8 gauge there in the middle for the remote. Also 8 gauge for the speaker outputs. This is a stereo amplifier, so we have left and right. And bridging capabilities also, which are right positive and left negative. Flipping the amplifier over, we have an acrylic bottom with US Amps etched into the bottom plate. Looks really nice, has some holes as well for cooling. As for ratings, at 4 ohms the amplifier is rated 270 by 2, 2 ohms 430 by 2, 1 ohm 660 by 2, bridge 4 ohms 870, 2 ohms 1270. They also recommend a 200 amp external fuse, and again these ratings are at 12 volts. As far as dimensions go, 23.1 inches for the length, 7 inches for the width, 2.1 inches for the height. Millimeter equivalents are there as well. Hooking the amp up to the lithium bank here, we're using the dual inputs just because we can. And let's power it up here. You can see there is the green LED inside the palm tree. Very cool. We'll also fire up the amp dyno so we can test this amplifier out to find out how much power it puts out. On the left, you'll see the power output in watts. In the middle, the ohm load. On the right, the voltage of the dyno. We'll also have the remote clamp so we can calculate the amplifier's efficiency.
Ready?
Okay, first up, we'll try the 2-channel test again. Here at 4 ohms, it's rated 270 watts by 2. That's at 12 volts. We're going to be feeding it more than that. So we'll find out here what we get at the higher voltage. We're testing it at 40 hertz. Let's see what we get here. And there you go. 363, 345, so about 352 watts or so average per channel. Very good. Here, let's try it uncertified up to clipping. See what we get here. Very close to the same, and this is not atypical. We do see this quite frequently on amplifiers that don't do much more uncertified than they do certified. That's okay. Let's try dynamic. See what kind of dynamic power we have. Voltage is a little bit higher here dynamically, around 14.5, but we're getting 394 and 370 at 14.56. 2 ohms, the amp is rated 430 by 2 at 12 volts. Again, we're using the 40 hertz track, and we're going to be providing it more than that, over 14 volts. Here we go. 589 and 575 at 14.36. Let's reset the dyno here for the uncertified test. Again, which takes us to the clipping point. That certified test takes us to 1% distortion. 594, 575, so about 585 average per channel. And the differences you're seeing between the channel here, you'd never hear those. The difference is very insignificant as far as dB watts go. And here, dynamically at 2 ohm stereo, you can see we're getting right at 700 watts per channel, 14.48. Now this amp is rated down to 1 ohm. It is a class AB at 660 watts times 2 at 12 volts. Let's find out what we get around 14 volts here. Certified 1% distortion. There you go. About 815 watts per channel, 14.22. So this amp has definitely got the juice to provide the power they suggest, plus a little more. Uncertified, there you go, 854 watts average per channel, 14.2 volts. Nice. Let's try it dynamic. Sending that 40 hertz pulse track. Oh yes. There's your juice, my friends. 1200 watts per channel. That's a 2400 watt amp here, 14.47. Now, before we move on to the bridge test, let's do the stereo sound demo using the ELAC bookshelf speakers. Let's power up the amp and see how it sounds. I don't typically talk about sound quality because it is subjective. In this case, the amp sounded great. It didn't blow me away. It didn't disappoint me. Overall, I was happy. All right, now let's move on to the bridge mono test. We are going to bridge the amp using the right positive and left negative. That's the outer terminals here on the amp. Of course, we still have the 1.0 power going in, dual mode. Let's try 4 ohms mono. It's rated 870 watts at 12 volts. Again, we're testing at 40 hertz. Let's try it out and see what we get here. Can we get that 870? Oh, yes. 1232, 14.42. So again, the rated wattage there is at 12 volts, and that's what a lot of people like from the old school days. But you can see here, if you can get over 14 volts, you're getting about 500 watts more. Uncertified to clipping, 1235, right at 14.42. Let's try the dynamic test, see if it jumps up over 1200 watts. And yes, we are close to 1500, 1473 at 14.58. But we're not done yet, my friends. This amp can do 2 ohms mono or 1 ohm stereos, rated 1270 watts at 12 volts. Let's find out what we get here. Certified to 1% distortion. And yes, 1772 watts, 14.31. Nice. Now let's try it uncertified up to the clipping point and see if we get over that number that we just showed, the 1771. And we're right at the same, 1770 at 14.3. Now let's reset the dyno one more time here for the dynamic burst and see what we get here. Over 2,000, check this out, almost 2,500 watts. Again, this is a Class AB design, not a Class D. This is an old school design, almost 2,500 watts, 2 ohms. Very nice. Now before we get to the results, let's power up the amp again and try it here with the old school SoundStream subwoofers.
Feel blessed for mine. 2 years ago, like the Tesla prime. As long as I'm breathing, I'm a stretch to ride. Keep trying to fuck me, drop it above. D-Wiz, verify the outcome. D-Wiz in his fuck.
The The amp power of the subwoofer is great. There are a couple things I noticed. The fan on the amp was kind of loud. It also, even at 50 hertz, did not cut out all the highs, but that is something we've seen before, so it's not unusual. Now the amp did get extremely hot after we ran all the subwoofer tests here for about 30 minutes or so. Exterior of the heatsink was around 125 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very hot. It doesn't appear that little fan there did a whole lot to help keep it cool, but I would make sure you add some external fans to help keep this thing cool if you're running on subwoofers. Now here are the results. Stereo first, we did test 4 ohms, 2 ohms, and 1 ohm with the efficiencies there. Again, this is a Class AB amplifier, so we're not expecting high efficiencies by any means, but it did perform well at rated and well above the rated power, as you can see here. Make sure you watch all the way to the end of the video for lower voltage tests. Now let's find out what's inside. Again, it does have an acrylic bottom on it, but we're going to take that acrylic bottom off so we can take a closer look at the components here. There are 8 screws that hold this bottom plexi panel on, and I did notice the bottom plexi panel is not very thick. It's just a design I guess they decided to go with. Not very thick, but it didn't have any problems cracking or anything. It does look really nice here with the logo in the center. Now when we do a flyover of the amp, first thing you'll notice is the orange capacitors definitely stand out, and not really sure why they went with this brand Decon. And I've checked with some technicians, and these are literally kind of the budget of the budget brands capacitors here. 80 volt, 8200 microfarads there on the rails. Also the power supply, we have 3300 microfarads, 16 volts. Again, they're Decon. These are all same looking orange capacitors here. Probably look very bright here if you're watching it in HDR. And most modern amps I see use 25 volt there instead of 16 volt. But it's nice to see they have Sanken for the outputs. These Sanken transistors are known for their sound quality. And here near the inputs, we have the op amps. These are the LM072Cs by ST Corp. These are kind of middle of the road op amps, nothing too fancy or special here. You see US amps, USA-50HC here on the board. Let's move on to the pros and cons of the amp. Things I like, things I think it could be better. First up, things I like. Rated power plus, obviously at every ohm load. Quality potentiometers. I like the Sanken outputs. The oversized 1.0 inputs are also very nice. The color, finish, and the acrylic bottom, they all look very nice together. Overall, the amp looks super sweet. 2 ohm mono capable. Again, a Class AB amp. It's going to pull a lot of current, but it is nice to know it can handle 1 ohm loads. Now, the things to consider, the heatsink, the reason I have it on here is because it doesn't feel very heavy. It almost feels like they use a lighter weight aluminum or not enough aluminum. Also, the generic capacitors and op amps. Bass boost is not variable, it's just a switch from 0, 6, or 12 dB. There is no bass remote included. It's also kind of large and the efficiency is low for Class AB. That's kind of expected. And the price, at the time of the video, $1,079. Does seem like a lot for an amplifier in 2024, but this is a classic remake of US Amps amplifier. So, if you have a classic car or something like that, want a amp that kind of matches the old school theme, and here you go. These are really designed for those who are not so price conscious, and according to US Amps, these have high damping factor as well as slew rates, so they're designed for those with the SQ in mind. I can't test those things. I just show you guys the power output, show you with speakers, and have fun. Thanks again for watching. Big D, I'm out of here. All right, those who stick around to the end know we're going to show some additional tests. Let's lower that voltage. Try the 4 ohm mono test here, rated 870 watts at 12 volts. We're not dropping all the way to 12, but we're going to be about 13.5. And there you go, 1,049 certified at 40 hertz. Let's try the dynamic test, sending that 40 hertz pulse tone into the amp. Right around 14 volts, we're looking at 1,331 watts. But we're not done yet. That's right, we're going to drop it to 2 ohms, which is rated 1270 at 12 volts. Let's see what we get here. Certified, 40 hertz, 1% distortion, 1,431 watts. Nicely above that rated power of 1270. Dynamically, let's check this out. We're over 2,200 watts at 13.5 volts. 2263 at 13.55. US Amps 50HC 1 ohm bridged. Dynamic burst. $29.65, 14.35.